All right, guys. Where to even start? Let's see. Uh, well, we had 8 people out representing us at various points on the globe here this past month, uh, and one of them has fallen ill and is at the emergency room right now. So we're sort of on alert here, waiting to hear more about her. Hopefully, she's all right, but please realize that we're kind of on alert here and I may have to step away or take a phone call at any second. Um, their their missions were overall very successful. Uh, we have a photograph that I hope to be sharing here soon of our peace flag flying at the UN, which is a good thing. Um, we are going through a lot of work, as you can imagine, just trying to make sense of all of this change to the government employees who are affected by it, first and foremost. And we're trying to, at the same time, educate the British territorial employees that are working with Trump. And a lot of them are still in this mindset of we're at war, and they've never been at war. They've been in a filthy, illegal mercenary conflict, and they haven't even known it. But you can see how this makes for an interesting dialogue where they have this absolute idea that they're at war when they're not and never have been. And so, no matter how many times that you tell someone that when they're coming from that mindset, they have to prove it to themselves. And ironically, it's easier to prove it to the real true military men than it is to the civilian personnel, because the military guys know about things like the law of war and the Geneva Conventions and the law of peace and the rules of occupation and all those sorts of things. And so when you start pointing out some real basic things, especially about things that should be there and aren't, um, then they catch on. They may not like it, but they catch on. But the civilian employees that they call the civilian military, which is another oxymoron, right? Um, they're very much more ignorant about everything military to begin with. And so it's harder for us to communicate with them. They think it's some sort of ruse and that we're, that we're trying to lead them into a trap or ambush or something. Anyway, it's taking a lot of concerted effort from a lot of different foreign governments, a lot of different diplomatic corps people, a lot of top lawyers and judges and justices and professors of law, and other people are having to come in and actually weigh in and um, provide the kind of expertise that's credible to the employees and try to get their heads wrapped around this. That, oh, we're not at war. We haven't ever been at war. After 160 years of this being their excuse and reason for being, um, this is coming as a great shock. Nonetheless, the truth will have its day, and we're all plodding along and going through this process peaceably and as patiently as we can. It's difficult after this many years of, going through this drill of having to do all this research ourselves and everything and finally settle the questions in our own minds that, well, to us it's old news, to them it's new news, and it can be very frustrating. Anyway, we're making good progress on that. Thus far, we haven't had any real serious challenges in terms of anybody actually drawing a gun on us and thinking we were the enemy. Um, and so all of that is turning out as well as we could have hoped. It's just taking longer than anyone would like. Um, Mr. Trump, he's kind of a cipher, he does some really good things. He does some really uh, questionable things. Uh, I don't have all of the information that he has about all the different things that come across his desk, so I'm not in a good position to make a determination of whether what he is doing is sensible or not. Um, we do, however, have certain sort of items that are long-standing concerns, and we do have some hot button issues that are right on the table now with regard to the situation in Venezuela and the situation in this country with all of the people who have entered the country without going through the mandated legal process of becoming a U.S. citizen, or at least getting a green card, something. Um, so this is taking up a lot of concern and energy on the part of everyone because the situation with Venezuela could conceivably turn into a war, and nobody wants that. And the situation with the immigrants has been very, very hard and disruptive on them and on us and everybody concerned. We can only step back and look at the policies and the policy makers who brought us this untenable situation and resolve that we're never going to vote for them again, right? um, but yeah, this whole immigration issue has been very difficult. We we have public laws that are on the books and they have never been changed, and it's not reasonable or acceptable for us as a government to allow to ignore the public law. So we have to carry on with the deportation, but at the same time, we've had some really egregious things happen, and people are not being treated with any proper respect, or were not being treated with any proper respect. And so there's been efforts to get things back onto a sort of a more normalized pattern where um, people who are here illegally but who came with families are not being separated. The kids are not being separated from the parents, and things like that are not happening anymore. And more effort is being made to determine the circumstance of each individual, whether or not they actually have reason to fear a reprisal if they return to their home country and things of that nature. They're taking a little more time to do the right thing, to do it the right way. And we're doing more in terms of trying to find ways to help with the resettlement. Because, well, you can imagine, you tear up your roots and you come to a different country and you stay there for what, 2, 3 years? Some of these people have been here. And then, boom, you have to go back to your home country and start over with basically the clothes on your back. And we have asked that they be allowed to take their belongings, that they be able to pack up and take their belongings with them. But still, it's a very difficult, the whole thing is very difficult, no matter what you do. And Britain is having even worse problems because they're a smaller country and they've absorbed a great number of refugees in a relatively short period of time. And it's leading to riots in the streets. I don't know how many people have been tuned into the news, but over 12,000 British policemen simply didn't show up for work, which was a substantial portion of the police force in Britain, just weren't there. And this went on for, I believe they said, over 48 hours, or 2 full days, 4 police shifts. And their prime minister was totally worthless, had nothing to say, gave no answers, gave no directives, just trying to backpedal it and make sure that the immigrant issue wasn't brought up. Well, needless to say, that isn't going to work, not even in Britain. And so the Starmer administration is once again under the gun, and the public is thoroughly alert now and thoroughly outraged. So that's what's going on in Britain. We see similar activities in Germany and other countries too, where we don't hear much about the rioting, we don't hear much about the legal challenges, we don't hear much about the the union activity and other things that are actually happening in these other countries as a result of illegal immigration. It was just one of those half-baked plans that anyone with any worldly common sense would never allow. But these ideologues who got all of their life learning at college uh, have these idealistic ideas, and they will not give up on them until it's been rubbed in their faces. And unfortunately, everybody else has to suffer as a result of this kind of myopic and ignorant public policy. So anyway, that those things have kind of taken center stage in terms of diplomacy and international affairs this past week. We've made great progress with our project, the traffic hub, the software traffic hub, to be able to make all of the different kinds of currencies flow into and out of the right patterns and banks that are needed to run a multi-currency system, so that you have actual money and you have credit currencies, the prepaid credit, which is a whole separate thing. We were looking at having 3 different cards to be able to deal with the demands of such a system. And over the past 3 weeks, 4 weeks, the IT guys have labored largely, really burning a lot of midnight oil there to build a hub, I call it a traffic circle, that can combine all of these different functions, all these different exchanges, um, and do it all with one card. So it looks like we're going to be able to do all of that with just one card that will be very, very user-friendly. You won't have to figure out the exchange rates. It will all be automatically calculated. And the vendors will decide the form of payment that they want. So that when you use your card to buy something, you'll see a little sign that says gold and silver, or prepaid credit, or, they will give you some warning what it is that the vendor is going to request first. And then if you have problems, whatever, say that you've run out of your gold account for now, then you would then have an option of trying the prepaid credit option. And so it's going to be a little bit more complex just to go to the store, but then you'll have gold and silver and prepaid credit as options to pay, and you'll have access to your own, I guess you could call it a trust fund, but you'll have assets that you can access that you don't have now. And that will be wonderful for people who have struggled for many years at the bleeding edge of poverty. And it will be a great thing for young families that are struggling to make it possible for one parent to stay home. A lot of things will change, and socially, we're hoping that this will open up all sorts of opportunities for people to live life on their own terms, the way they want to live, and not the way they have to live. So it's a whole brave new world out there, and right now we're seeing some of the ills of the transition, which are unavoidable. Things like inflation are biting hard and deep. We're seeing a lot of things where advertising is less than honest. Please be more skeptical when you're buying quote unquote organic food. Buy from sources that you trust, name brands that you trust, because we've had several different actions the past week where vendors of food products were advertising their product as being organic, and they were using a rather ridiculous excuse that anything with carbon in it is organic, as in organic chemistry, you see. And so the different organizations that are supposed to be keeping an eye on these food vendors that say their product is organic, and actually certifying that it's organic, are not always 100% honest, and sometimes they just say it and there's no certification at all on it. So be careful about what you buy and be skeptical of claims that are not fully supported. We had an example of a guy that was basically not even a farmer, not even a rancher, who was running a business that held cows preparatory to taking them to slaughter, and he was turning them out for a couple of days in pasture lands, and then advertising the meat as grass fed. Well, I'm sorry. Those cows were, feedlot cows from the time that they were born, and they were not the kind of healthy grass-fed animals that the labeling implied. And so we're having a lot of trouble with that because they're trying to get premium prices and are not being very honest about their advertising. And so make sure, or at least as sure as you can, that you're getting what you're paying for. So that was another little thing that came up was food labeling that really isn't what it should be, and the need to be kind of skeptical when you're buying, especially organic food. What else? You can all see what's happening in terms of Mr. Trump and his administration. Just a matter of reading the news. We had an incident with Mr. Trump signing off appointing an unknown man to be quote unquote president of the United States. Well, that can only mean the president of some incorporated entity calling itself the United States, because there's absolutely no provision, not in the Union, not in the Federation, and there was none in the Confederation, and there was no such provision in any of the federal contractors to appoint a president. Now, that might be common enough in commerce to have multiple companies under the leadership of one CEO, and it may be common enough in that situation for a CEO to turn to someone else and appoint them to act as CEO of a second company, right? But there is no such provision for any of our organizations to appoint a president. Our organizations have a well-defined succession, which is to the vice president. And if the vice president should be unable to conduct business, then it goes to the Speaker of the House. So there are two offices behind every president. And we pointed out to everyone that if Mr. Trump had or has a second office that he needs to get rid of, if it were in our system of law and governance, he would simply hand it off to J.D. Vance. And we observed that that's not happening. So we're still unsure exactly what's meant by the United States in that case. We're not sure what Mr. Clooney Kennedy is asserting in terms of the assets that are in that version of United States. And we're suspicious that it may be another end run trying to commandeer assets of the United States without really admitting what they're doing, which was explained in an article this past week for anyone who's interested. We have had some contacts with international news reporters and with domestic news reporters over the past week and a half that have been, I guess, overall have been encouraging, have been, they're showing greater understanding than they ever have regarding the issues of lawfulness versus legality. And that's an important part of understanding what's going on and what has gone on for the last 160 years. So we are making some good headway in terms of educating the journalists, in hopes that the journalists will help us educate everybody else. But it is proving to be a substantial effort to bring people up to speed. And we need to do it more quickly than we're currently able to. So we're looking forward to having the bank up and rolling and have some actual working capital to do things to create extensive educational material that people can pursue in the quiet of their own homes. And that's essentially one of the big goals getting out of the box here, so that we can educate as many Americans as possible and bring as many of them home as possible. So I think that that's about all I had to report in terms of issues or progress made. Do keep checking your GFG accounts. I would recommend that you check them once a day. There is not, we've never said there would be any big whoopla, fireworks and all of that. There's not going to be that kind of announcement about going live with the system. You'll simply log into your account one day and it'll be live, and everything will be updated and everything will be live, and you'll just be able to go on about your merry business. So I really do recommend that you check in with your GFG account at least on a regular basis, if not every day. Become very thoroughly familiar with their username and password system so that you are familiar with the way it works. There will be an additional key added, is my understanding, for security purposes, just as the system goes live. So I have yet to see what that's going to look like. I am assuming, and this is always unsafe to do, but I'm assuming that when they add the additional credentials, that it will be a matter of interrupting you in the middle of your transaction or your action to get onto your page and asking you to choose another code or another number or another who knows what, but to add a little bit more information to your login process. So I just know that you've got all sorts of questions for me. I can feel it on the tips of your tongues.
Well, I'm about 2 weeks behind on the questions, so I'm trying to get them all to you. All right, so let's start off with this question. Who is running our military, Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Space Force, Coast Guard that you, our public, are paying for? And when can we get updates on what they are doing to clean up the most corrupt country in the world? What are their mandates? We want justice for the people and organizations that should be charged. Pedophilia, fraud, murder, corrupt judges, politicians. Innocent people wrongly put in jail for many years and still sitting in jail. The world is fed up with these crimes and nobody talks about holding these heinous criminals accountable. Who is protecting all these criminals and why?
Well, you have to begin with the fact that we've been illegally occupied by a foreign mercenary force for 160 years. This is not something that started overnight or yesterday, and it won't be cleaned up overnight either. It's going to take time. Now, Mr. Trump and his administration have taken aim at two of the more important aspects of the corruption, and one of those is to bust the adrenochrome and pedophile and ritual sacrifice cults. Now, this is an armed operation against actual religious cultists. So the religious cults are organized. They're organized to commit crimes, even though they claim that this is all part of their religion. So Mr. Trump is having none of that and is biting back as hard as anyone reasonably could to shut down these networks that are kidnapping children and doing horrible things to them. So he has his fangs set into that, but good, and also the issue of the illegal immigration into the country. So he has two of the major issues in view and in hand to a greater or lesser extent. And we're grateful for that. We're looking at getting rid of the entire district court system and the IRS in fairly short order. So there are court reforms and reforms of the presumptions of law that have long been a stumbling block to justice in this country. So all those things are going forward. We also find that a lot of the corruption is based on things that the banks have done or which the banks are allowing. And so there's banking reform in the air. I hesitate to say that the military isn't responsible because really the military is not responsible for cleaning up civilian crime. That's something that we are supposed to be doing ourselves, and it invites a dangerous degree of military co-option of the civilian government for it to be otherwise. So there are some things which you can argue are within federal jurisdiction, and that both the military and the civilian government can have an interest in those cases. And what happens in those cases, someone can be prosecuted both under federal law and under state law. Okay, so there are a lot of different complexities that go into determining just where is the jurisdiction. And then that in turn has some end results for how quickly things can be managed. If you have to go through 2 suits instead of 1, obviously you can spend a lot more time than if you just have 1 suit to deal with. I do understand your frustration. I have had to fight the good fight to make sure that these crimes are treated as crimes and are not treated as something political. Because at the end of the day, none of this is political. None of this is about race. None of this is about religion. In terms of the government, it's all about money and it's all about coercive power. So we've been able to keep our focus razor sharp on that issue so that it does not become a military matter if it isn't already. Which, it's a substantial part of this is under the military's watch. The other thing that you have to think about here is that there are essentially 2 militaries. There's the British territorial military, and there's the municipal military. So you have Department of War over here, upper lowercase, right? And you have the DOD over here. It's all messed up. All of these things are more complex than you could ever imagine if you just walked through the door. And they all grant certain immunities to prosecution. So there again, we've got a situation where we need to reform the law. We need to release the people who have been persecuted and prosecuted under foreign law because it's expressly forbidden in the constitutions, and we are still here. Something important for everybody to understand is that those who are responsible for this mess in our country actually had a plan to vacate our land and soil jurisdiction and claim that it was abandoned and ready for salvage operations by the British merchant mariners and the admiralty functions of the British Navy. So this was a very near thing in terms of being able to bring our country back from the brink of that kind of a supposition and to stand on our flat little feet and say no. But yeah, it can take a while to work through these multi-jurisdictional cases. And I would just caution everybody to be aware that whether military or civilian, most federal government employees know less about our history than we do, and we don't do much. I mean, if you're asking Joe Average on the street, there are a lot of Americans out there who have not been receiving a proper education in American law or history or government functions or structures, any of it. We haven't even been taught about money and economy. So we've been left ignorant about certain aspects of life that we very much do need to be involved in and think about and bring to bear.
Okay, for the next part, Communication throughout this nation could positively support our mission to wake up the country. When will freedom of the press be reinstated in our country and have an honest media to report the local truth locally, nationally, and internationally? We are sick of the media throwing choreographed news stories on every station, pushing their BS narratives.
Well, I couldn't agree more. We've got an odd situation in that a lot of the press organs have been privatized and bought by the government. It's an odd situation. So you think that you're dealing with a corporation, and in fact, you are dealing with a corporation, but that corporation happens to be masquerading as your government, as well as ABC Corporation. And so we're finding a lot of instances of corruption where government employees or government employee cronies, people that were, um, friends of friends of friends sort of thing, are benefiting themselves by abusing the public trust. And just having a whole ration of it. We're hoping that as we proceed forward, that more of the communications assets will go back into truly private hands, and that more and more people will realize the value of having good journalism when they look at the situation between the kind of news coverage that we get in this country and the kind of news coverage that we should have in this country. Now, if our news organs had been up to speed, there's no way that this entire situation could have happened. I mean, we can point at the fact that 5 large media conglomerates own and control virtually all news and all journalistic products in this country. And those 6 all depend upon 2 wire services, Reuters and the AP, the Associated Press. So you've got a situation where instead of being journalists in the sense that we know and expect, these guys are actually just taking a news feed, and there's a good word for you, feed, off of the wire service, and they're repeating whatever the story is coming on off of Reuters or the Associated Press or whatever. And so they're avoiding doing any creative investigative reporting or investigation because it's ever so much cheaper and easier to just take whatever story is coming in off of the feed, right? As in feedlot, as in feeding station. It's easier for them to take it off of a wire service and just parrot it. Now, we've all seen the Mockingbird response in the press where you, at any given moment, have all these different talking heads and they're all saying the same thing in more or less the same terms, even down to using the same words. So that's one problem. The other problem is that since 1917, we've had a restriction on our own ability to communicate with other people, and that then also afflicts our ability to control and expand upon public news coverage. The British territorial commercial corporations took over those functions in 1917, and they've never relinquished them. So we've been living under a constant gag order, and that's why we don't know. For example, we don't know the conditions in England right now. We haven't heard about any gigantic police walkout. We haven't heard about a lot of things in this world because we have been limited in what we could learn. And that is a grossly unfair travesty because we deserve to know. And we have depended on our own news agencies and our own news gathering organizations to protect and preserve that for us. And instead, they have turned around and gone off on their own agenda and used the wartime censorship. Let's just call it for what it is. Wartime censorship abilities in peacetime. So yeah, I know it's a big problem. I know that it's been going on since 1917. We can return those treaties. We can take action on our own behalf to shut down any news source that is not doing a credible job for the public. And I believe you'll be seeing some of that go on. And it will take a long time before we get rid of the political memes, the ideas that pass from generation to generation. We probably won't zero in on those until a year or so goes by. And I say that just based on different censorship programs that have existed in this country since George Washington. But anyway, one of the best things we can do is to challenge the news sources. Let them know that they're selling a piece of garbage as the news, that they're being arbitrary, that they're being dependent on the Associated Press or on the Reuters service to do work that they should be doing themselves and then reporting back to the public. And as long as we continue to demand a better product, and as long as we hold them feet first to the fire, we should have one of the best news services in the world.
Okay. For our next question, do you foresee the removal of district courts helping those in prison being released, such as Cheryl Corbell?
Well, my understanding is that Cheryl and numerous other people have been imprisoned by county courts, and that is one layer down from the state of state or district courts for the state of. All right. Technically, those county courts are not supposed to be franchises, but in fact they are. So we're going to have to do a massive educational effort at the county level, and then we're going to have to declare mistrials for all of the people that were affected.
Okay. Next question. How will the passport work to get international passport in the new system?
Well, we've been talking about that. The organization that oversees that is the Universal Postal Union. And the recommendation that was made is that we look at issuing a passport that is simpler than the current passport and has a more diverse user group associated with it. You're all familiar with diplomatic passports. Well, there are other countries that issue passports according to the function. So, for example, if you were going out to Japan on a business trip, your passport would be of a different nature than if you were going to Italy for a vacation. Okay. And so there's going to be a lot of examination of the passport system and a lot of discussion with the UPU to make sure that whatever we come up with is going to be hopefully simpler and will be something that our country controls. Absolutely, instead of it being left up to British territorials to make up their minds about us.
Okay. Are the probate courts also getting shut down along with the district courts? And if yes, how can we, who have the will, get the banks to listen to us without their grant of probate?
Well, I think that this is a top-down program for the most part. I don't think there's a lot that we can do other than expose their operations for the constructive fraud involved. So I would advise everybody just wait another couple of weeks and see how where we stand with regard to these questions on the district and the county courts. It may be that the county of courts are so universally attached to the state of state courts that both will go down at the same time. It's possible.
Okay, two quick questions. Wow, that doesn't look quick. Either way. In June of 23, we caught bioweaponeers releasing manufactured mosquitoes that contain manufactured parasitic sterilizing bacteria into our neighborhoods. Due diligence revealed that this to be an initial test run for what is made to be a worldwide manufactured insect agenda. In Hawaii's case, the underlying science is to deploy microorganisms from mosquitoes called, can't pronounce it, Wolbachia, into filarial parasites that inhabit humans, with the results that Wolbachia causes sterility by means of attracting its host parasite to ovaries and testes. What may be done to halt worldwide weaponization and weaponized insect programs, one goal of which is flying vaccinations? Hawaii's government signed perpetual contracts for the subscription service. That was a mouthful.
This is what happens when you privatize functions of government and leave yourself open to manipulation by commercial corporations or municipal corporations that may have goals very different from your own. The whole issue should never have come up. Nothing like that should exist, right? And under land law, it doesn't. But under territorial law or municipal law, it does. Now, what's the key here? Those laws should apply only to British territorial subjects, right? And only to those municipal parties that have a valid interest, which of course they never do. So this is a problem of privatization, where I trust everybody knows how privatization works. That's where, instead of the government actually doing the work and taking the responsibility for doing it and being accountable for it, they instead hire their own subcontractors as quote unquote agencies. And then those agencies form a sort of a flak jacket for the government entity that is supposed to be doing the work. At least that's how it's worked in the past. So all these agencies are a means for the departments to escape accountability. And again, that is not the way this is supposed to work. It's upside down and backwards. But it is what it is. And knowing that, then you're better prepared to deal with what you see going on. And why is it, you ask, you can win in this court and then lose in that court? It's because they're practicing two different forms of law. And if you want a real good, straight, simple explanation about that, we did publish a very short video clip that explains the change in law and dictionaries. I would highly recommend everybody goes and sorts through the articles of the past week until you find that, and read it and look at it and think about it, because we are living in a country that hasn't really had a government in 160 years. This has meaning, this has responsibilities, and we are doing the best we can with a bad situation.
Okay, now for the next of the two quick questions. Hawaii's Governor Josh Green plans to remove all religious exemptions to opting out of 72 mandatory vaccines for all children in all cases. Will the changes underway nip his efforts in the bud?
I don't believe so. I believe that there are a lot of issues surrounding childhood vaccines that need to be examined. Everything that this whole de facto system has promoted has ultimately been for the de facto system, not for the living people. So they're going to be interested in listing you as dead any way that they possibly can. Doesn't mean you're dead, obviously, but as long as they have that registration intact and on the record, they have an advantage commercially. And so it's unfortunate that so much of our government was privatized in this way, because we certainly didn't sign up for it.
Okay, hi Anna. In last week's call, mind you, this was like 2 weeks ago now. You discussed we will have access to our funds in about 2 weeks. Will it be strictly transacting through the website, or will we have physical cards, or will there be an app to download on our phones? Essentially, can we expect to have everything we need to transact in the next week or so? Thank you.
Well, I know that the inside transactions are very simple, and I know that they've beta tested everything that they can think of. We had to take some time out and rethink and rebuild the traffic hub to get all these different forms of currency to speak to each other. But it's just a matter of day by day by day by day, you know, what's working, what isn't working. And hopefully that debugging process will renew itself and begin again when we have live people doing the transactions, accessing their accounts, and buying and selling through their accounts.
Okay, this question is on behalf of the SIA coordinators and individuals that processed an SIA claim. We were previously told that when the access to our credit GFB platform is active, those SIA claims would need to be distributed as part of the true up to recoup those claims based on the detailed spreadsheets SIA coordinators submitted to Terry. How will the SIA claim money, air quotes around that, based on those spreadsheets be handled? Thank you.
Well, the two separate things. The spreadsheets get paid off, and then whatever's left gets paid off. And they're two different systems. So just think of splitting up the claim and whatever's accrued since the claim was made.
Okay. Anna, how can we take action against militarized municipal stormtroopers and LEOs that evicted us from the home belonging to my son, non-ASN, in 2012, despite my efforts to defend and save the castle? These gangsters of, air quote, stormtroopers exert physical forces to harm me, cause mental trauma. These monsters should be put in an orange jacksuit for life.
Oh, I know the
Basically, how to
feeling.
take action.
Well, we have taken action against the very basic evil of the district courts, which are responsible for sending these men into harm's way under false pretenses. These are average people who have no idea what they're doing. They believe that what they're doing is right and honorable. And so we're shutting down the source of the corruption and facing the reality of how vast the real problem is. You're looking at the release of a lot of people that actually didn't harm anyone, didn't injure anything, and have been in jail for anywhere from 20 years and 5 days. And it all has to get cleaned up. So that's the agenda, is to release people and to assist them in getting all their records straight and to forestall any more attacks on anybody.
Okay. If there is no real Donald Trump, there is no real Trump administration. So who is Anna actually addressing? Who is actually carrying out the directives? Who is it exactly? Who is angry with the directives? Where is Donald Trump? And we need to know that before anything can proceed, before anyone can be trusted to act upon the directives. Who is it who responded to your questions? Do you know? It seems you/we are speaking into the void. Doesn't that concern you?
Because they're all functioning in a dead capacity. and they can't really talk to us. They can't respond to us in the way that you might think. As for Donald Trump, there are 9, count them 9, known body doubles, and they're not all controlled by the same individuals or agencies. So a lot of what you hear that has disparate information is being generated by body doubles that listen to Trump to a certain extent, and then just boom, there you go. An entire important piece of a piece of legislation or of a public policy will be destroyed in front of your face by one of the evil Donald Trump look-alike fakes. And then one of the good Donald Trumps, they're all body doubles, right? They're all actors. They're not the actual Trump, comes along and fixes it and appears to be returning something to its original trajectory. But you see how crazy it gets when you have 9 people who are playing the same man and getting away with it.
Okay, next question. I do not have a smartphone and do not really want one, but the global QR code app requires one to run it on. Will you have any alternatives to the app that can be used for payments? A couple of years ago, you mentioned having cards, but have since switched to the QR app. What other options will there be?
Well, QR codes can be used just like barcodes. They don't have to be in an electronic or digital form. They can be just printed on a piece of paper. I'm sure most of you are familiar with seeing QR codes on grocery store placards that are advertising sales. And you scan the QR code, and it takes a coupon credit, takes record of that, so that when you go through the checkout, you automatically accrue all of these different discounts that you use the QR code scanner to capture. So no, you don't have to have something physical to use the QRC code. And you don't need an app either.
Okay, next one. I've been driving with an expired LP since 2022. For over a year, I've been noticing, calling, emailing, and visiting the DMV, sheriff, and Secretary of State, asking for their private plate, permanent sticker, or a written acknowledgement that I can use my own plates, and they are just ignoring me or telling me they don't have those, or that if I want to drive, I have to have a license plate. At the sheriff's office, they told me they don't issue license plates after I explained everything several times. Those people are just impossible to deal with. What should we do?
Well, we basically have to keep hammering on them, and as we do, enough about the world will have changed so that they begin to take us seriously. Because it's an absolute fact that they cannot impose driver licenses on anyone. So driving and driver's licenses are two things that have been grossly misrepresented. When they're talking about driver licensing, they're talking about what should be properly recognized as commercial licensing, because the only people that are liable for a tax are those who are using the public roads for private enrichment, and that's why they owe the tax. Okay? And as we all know, that we've all been misidentified as commercial drivers in that sense, when we're not. Okay, so they can't take a license, they can't take a privilege, they can't define it that way, except as they misrepresent and impersonate you as someone or something other than you. So all of that is just personage and barratry. They pretend that you need a license when, in fact, you don't need a license.
Okay, next question. What happens if Trump's administration doesn't close the district courts for the public, and how and when we can expect to get our houses back? I'm almost 60, disabled, and homeless now because of them.
Well, I really don't know what to tell you in terms of a timeline. Nothing like this has ever been done before. I would expect that getting rid of 10 years worth of cases that need to be exonerated and property returned to the rightful owner would take at least a year of really working at it and working hard. Well, so I'm sorry that I don't have anything, some magic number, but as you can see, I don't use crystal balls, and it's all a function of which district courts get closed down first and how efficient they can be in addressing the great number of cases that they will have to review and exonerate.
Okay, for our next question, how would we access our funds if an EBS communication blackout happens for the 10 days that keep being talked about?
Well, that's when we fall back on our food stores that we have set aside for at least a month worth of food storage. Because you're right, if they do actually do that, and believe me, we are trying to keep them from doing that, you wouldn't be able to access anything anywhere on any kind of internet forum or communications forum that you're used to. On top of which, it would interfere with the ability of grocery stores and other stores to function. So it would basically shut everything down.
Okay, is there still the requirement that people be off of public assistance for a year to become an ASN? Will that still be in place after everything switches over from the de facto to our government?
Well, you won't need public assistance if you're an American, right? Because you're going to have access to your gold and your silver and your land and your other assets. So you don't have to worry about that if you're an American. And if you're not an American, well, there are a lot of different ways in which you can avoid going on public assistance. Um, creative ways of becoming employed, even though you're not um, an American officially. And there are plenty of ways in which you can uh, find a situation where you can be paid in cash and just live peaceably. People do it all the time. So I don't see why the focus on public assistance if you don't need public assistance.
Okay,
And
next
nobody
question.
will need
How?
it.
Yeah, that's valid. How will we get something like a pre-qualification letter to look at and buy houses and cars?
A lot of these things that you're thinking of won't exist. There'll be no need for them. There won't be a big cumbersome Medicare system. There won't be a big bunch of banking regulatory foo-foo-ah. Once you start dealing in real money and in prepaid credit, all that stuff goes out the window. You don't apply for loans. You don't get letters of credit. You don't, all these things that you've been used to in the past will be gone. Like public assistance, everybody thinks, oh, public assistance, SSI, food stamps. Those programs might still exist, but it will be in a vestigial capacity for people that fall through the cracks. It won't be there for average Americans because average Americans have more than enough to take care of their needs, to buy homes, to have cars, to go to college, to do remodels and renovations, to basically do what they want. And, their medical care won't be supervised by Big Brother. You'll be able to seek service and get help and do what you need to do on your own terms. Nobody's going to review the medical claim and say, oh, well, we're only going to pay for 23% of this. No, we're not going to pay someone to do that, number one. And there's no reason to pay someone to do that, number two. you're going to be spending your own money. If you're imprudent about spending your own money, well, then that's your problem.
Okay. Next question. Will credential cards ever work for people in other countries like the Philippines for such as travel or spousal visa to enter and or live in America?
They will all be going back to lawful credentials instead of the sorts of things that they're doing now, because all of those governments are operating in the same way that our government has been operating, and that means that they're not operating lawfully. So all these governments that you're used to, that you have seen growing up, will have to be lawfully converted back to the status they were always supposed to be in. And when that happens, once again, you're going to have a situation where passports are simpler. Uh, the whole process of getting a passport is simpler. Uh, Everything will be simpler with the credential cards. And so you'll see more and more countries going toward that.
Okay, a while back, Anna stated that all status corrected ASNs need to complete an AIS study course and have their certificate of completion on file with their state assembly to receive their inheritance and prepaid credit from the GFG Bank. Is that still a requirement? It was also stated that on the coordinator call Sunday night that all ASNs that have been status corrected and not participating within their assemblies will need to use the SIA coordinator as a bridge to their GFG accounts. What is the status on that? I searched on his articles and discovered no information on the subject. And
Oh,
thank you for all your dedication and hard work on restoration of our American common law government, Anna.
look, the Global Family Bank effort is its own thing, and nobody has any right to gatekeep it except Global Family, okay? The LROs or SIA, none of that has anything to do with Global. Global is its own thing. It's a bank, okay? Now, if you want to pursue your SIA claim, your Sign in America claim, uh, for a mutual offset credit exemption to pay off a house mortgage, fine. You can do that. You can even charge interest for the time that you've been waiting for that to happen and it didn't. Okay. So there may be reasons why you want to take an SIA claim and prosecute it, right? But if you're Joe Average and your real need and desire is just to pay off the mortgage and be done with it, if that's really all you want is to get it off your monthly billing, well, then you also have the option of just simply paying it off and being done with it. Or some combination of all the above. You know, I don't think people are beginning to really realize the freedom and the ability that they will have to live their own lives and make their own decisions when this is said and done. So whether you want to discharge a mortgage through the Sign in America mutual offset credit exchange exemption, or you are just fed up and sick and tired of it and decide, well, I've got all the money that I need to do that times 100, so I'm going to just use my own resources to pay off the house mortgage and have it totally in my name and belonging to me, well, that's a whole different bailiwick.
Okay, the next question. With the proclamations of shutting down the district courts / district courts in all caps and the return of all access with interest, who is going to enforce this?
Ultimately, it's all the same people that have been enforcing against you will now be enforcing for you. It's their job, actually. They just didn't know it.
Okay, from the article, Better Understanding. We wish you to know the crimes, the history, and the changes being made are real, are necessary, and are being enforced. In a world full of waha, as our Hawaiian friends say, this is the truth, and it is fully backed by the restored American Armed Forces. Who are the restored American Armed Forces?
Well, as I've told everybody multiple times, our American Armed Forces, our true military, were converted into a mercenary force back in 1861. They've been operating as mercenaries ever since. But when they flip that corner and go back from their unlawful conversion and are lawfully converted into a true national military again, then they will be able to help with those sorts of law enforcement issues. And the same thing is going to happen to all these different corporations that have been um, operating in an inappropriate way. So suddenly, the same organizations that were carrying out these false evictions are going to have to do the same thing that the district courts did or are doing and exonerate the mess and then go back and turn the properties back to the people that they actually belong to.
Okay, next question. Did Anna ever find out if we will be able to get one TGE PKTF radio when Bank goes live? Thanks in advance.
I'm assuming this is, I'm not quite understanding the context of the question. Is the we we're talking about a state assembly or is it an individual person?
I believe this is in reference to a question 3 weeks ago about if they would be able to use their GFG prepaid credit to get a PKTF radio through them. And I believe you said you would ask or something along those lines. I believe they're asking for an answer if we have one.
I don't, things have been so crazy, but um, I think that there will be a satellite phone network that people can opt into as a service nationwide. Um, but I really don't know if the PKTF system is something that can be shared out like that or not.
I honestly don't know either. Okay, for the next question then, could you please explain more about the process of nationalizing these unlawful corporations and what is the state's assembly's role in dismantling these corporations?
Well, right now they're all operating in the international jurisdiction of the sea and they're operating in an unlawful criminal way. Okay. So one of the things that you can do in that circumstance is you can force them to come under the true public law and function as lawful corporations, which is the way they're supposed to function anyway, as opposed to functioning as legal corporations. And that is a process known as nationalizing. You've heard that word before. Um, it's not a power that is used lightly. What we would want to do is convince more of the maritime corporations that it was in their own self-interest to go back and reorganize as land jurisdiction corporations. But certainly if we have problem corporations that have a history of being criminal, then that comes into play. And yes, we can force liquidation, we can force forfeiture, and we can hold those properties. I think there's a limit, a time limit on it. But yeah, there are a lot of different things we can do to get these corporations squared around so that they're acting lawfully instead of legally, and so that we have better control of what they do to us and to our communities, which is the whole point. But again, everybody wants this to happen instantly, and it isn't going to happen instantly. It's going to be something that is worked at over a period of months and even years. Think about the enormity of what we have in front of us. This entire structure, all the history that goes into it, stretches back 160 years. We're not going to be able to just snap our fingers and instantly have everything cleaned up and working as it should and everybody properly chastised and everybody properly informed. And no, it's going to take time. And shutting down the district courts is something that we can do up front and stop the hemorrhaging. But healing, that's another whole business. That's going to take, well, it'll probably be a process that goes on 20 or 30 years from, some total.
Okay, next question. Anna, you mentioned the med beds were designed and built by our military, and over 8 million of them have been sent all over the world. My question is, why should we trust the same military that brought us the COVID bioweapon to develop something that will help us? How can we be sure that the med beds aren't the final key in turning on the nanotech inside us and completing the transhumanist transformation? What gives you the confidence that these med beds are not part of the transhumanist agenda?
Well, remember, you have two different militaries. So it does depend which military has the med beds and which military does not have the med beds.
Okay.
Well, folks, I have to admit that I am just exhausted. I am basically just falling asleep here, and we've been at this for an hour and a half. I'm going to have to just call it for the night, and I apologize, but I've been up around the clock for a week, and it's just all kind of hitting me now. And so, if you have things that you need to get in front of me, please make use of my email. If you don't get an answer immediately, keep trying. It's, I'm being inundated with emails 24/7. So I will do my best and try to answer. Let's keep on the up and up and try to maintain a positive attitude about all of this and be patient because, as I say, it took 160 years. It's not going to disappear overnight. All right. And we'll be reconvening again Thursday for the coordinators call. I'm planning on, and this is again, everything in the schedule is kind of up for grabs because of things that happen, and then I have to pay attention to those larger issues. But I plan on being with Lisa Shaper tomorrow at 10:30 for her podcast, and then, with any luck, I'll be with Neethi and Greg Clarkson for the bucolic living law, and that whole podcast, which is devoted more to land issues. And we'll be convening on that 11 o'clock on Thursday. Anyway, I'm sorry, folks. I'm just having a very hard time here tonight, and I hope you will cut me some slack because, frankly, I deserve it.
Yes,
I've
you
been
do,
working
boss.
around the
Besides, this is actually good time. My power just went out and I am running on my backup battery for the computer.
Well, see, that's what happened. My backup battery.
Your back, no, your main battery, your backup battery, and your trietary battery have been worn down, boss. The computer,
Yeah.
unfortunately, is only on its secondary.
All right, guys. God bless
See?
everybody. It's going to work. We're making it work.
Yep, and try not to fly away like an Anana because I hear this windstorm is going to head your way when it finally leaves me.
Well, yeah, we've had horrible, horrible ice storms for a week, and then we've had wind at 90-mile-an-hour winds. So the weather here has been just horrible for what, 2 weeks, Shannon?
Yeah, 90. You guys only got up to 90. They clocked it right here at the fire station right across the street from me at 123 this morning.
Oh, and this was with
Yeah,
the
the
wind
Walmart had part
blowing
of its
snow.
roof. The Walmart had part of its roof peeled off.
Oh no.
Oh yeah, it's an adventure to go outside right now. You might take flight.
Well, as I said, we've had really bad weather for the last, 2 weeks. And I don't know when we can expect any changes, but yeah, it's been wild here in Alaska. Well,
All
folks,
right,
God
Anna, you
bless.
go get some rest.
Take care.
I'm gonna call it. Bye, everybody. See you next week.
Good night.